And Fox 5 is watching your wallet tonight when it comes to covering college tuition. Rising costs are a huge concern for families who rely on student loans to help pay college expenses.
All right, and the provision in the big, beautiful bill could change the game for students. Fox 5 Sharon Crowley here with what people need to know. Sharon.
Steve and Natasha, there are big changes coming. President Trump's big, beautiful bill, now law, has major implications for federal student loan repayment programs, and it impacts students who borrowed money and haven't paid it back yet, and those who want a loan for college or a graduate program. Now, the Biden administration had paused student loan repayments because of the pandemic and didn't resume them until late last year, but they didn't come after anybody who wasn't paying. That's all changing now. The Trump administration plans on collecting. Student debt in this country is a whopping $1.6 trillion with about 42 million borrowers. The Education Department says more than 5 million of those have not made a payment in the last year. More than just the collection process is changing. Now there will also be a cap on how much money students can borrow for graduate programs. Andrew Pentis is a student loan analyst.
While this bill's impacts are monumental, they don't necessarily change the best advice for these students and families. So when I'm counseling prospective students or current students, I'm telling them things like the single best way to lower your reliance on student loans is to choose a cheaper school. So, attending a community college, for example, figuring out what you want to study at that 2-year program before you go on to a 4-year school.
Well, the new law also reduces the number of different federal student loan repayment programs down to just 2. One is monthly and the other income-based. Anyone with debt or in default now does need to contact their federal student loan servicer. The amount of the monthly payments could change depending on your income and which repayment plan you choose. Derek Young Jr. is a higher education advocate.
I definitely feel for high school seniors, what they can do now is definitely prioritize taking advantage of private scholarships. I think for so long we have relied on federal loans, Parent Plus loans, which now have a cap. There are so many scholarships left on the table every single year that students don't necessarily take advantage of.
So critics say these changes to the federal student loan program will make it harder for students to pay for advanced degrees. But the Trump administration pushing back, saying it's streamlining a cumbersome system while encouraging students to borrow less money and pay it back sooner. Natasha?
All right, Sharon, thank you.
All right. What's going on, good people? What's going on? It's your boy Jay Taylor, Voices for the Voiceless. Peace of blessings. And we back with another video, And as the title says, Debunking the Lies Told About the Big, Beautiful Bill. And before we get off into that, I do want to say that, I had a great weekend with my family. Spent the weekend with my son and my mom. We went to go see Superman just came out. And I encourage everybody to go check that out, man. It's a great, great movie. My son wanted to see it. And what was interesting about the movie is, we talk about all this stuff with Kels and Diddy and all that. And at one point, Spider-Man had got hemmed up by the law. The government framed Superman. I keep saying Spider-Man. The government framed Superman, and they put him in this. They had him to try to paint him out to be this bad guy that really came from Krypton to rule over the world. He wasn't here to help, and they had to, somebody that framed him, kind of similar to how they frame, celebrities and stuff like that. So they used the media to manipulate the public to turn against Superman. And, that was the villain. The guy that was the villain. He was the one, of course, that orchestrated that. So it was interesting when they did that. They tried to hit your man with a RICO. Yes. I ain't gonna tell y'all the whole movie, but they was talking about Superman had a harem of women that he was, abusing and stuff like that. Like he was living a rock star lifestyle and had all these women, and they had him locked up and waiting trial and all that. I say, look at this. Then they got the news stations and all that sitting up there talking about, he's a womanizer too. It was just tripped out to see that and see how they. I'm like, see, it be signs and symbols in these movies. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, we had a great time. Of course, Superman, he's a flight risk, so we ain't get no bond. Superman a flight risk, he ain't gonna get no bond. Hey man, free Superman till it's backwards. All right. They lying on that man. It was tripped out, man. I'm like, wow. But yeah, man, I encourage y'all to go get that movie. He broke out of jail, of course, the Superman, which respect. But yeah, man, back to business though. With the big beautiful bill that passed, it's been a lot of talk about cuts to a lot of things. And this is part 3. In part 1. We covered, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Part 2, we talked about Medicaid, and now we talking about these Pell Grants and things of that nature and financial aid. And yes, the Trump administration is doing a lot of cuts, but I don't think it's for the reasons that a lot of people are thinking. And we're going to dive off into this, you know what I'm saying? I think it's more so about people not falling so far off into debt and winding up in college, and then they get all these degrees, and then they one, don't go into that field, 2, wind up with hundreds of thousands of debt for nothing, and 3, don't pay them back. And I'm guilty of that. Like I to this day, I still owe student loans. I know they're gonna come for me. And I'm just gonna have to settle my debt. But before we get off into that, let's go ahead and flash this so we don't get no smoke. As you can see, make that bigger. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing, nonprofit, educational, or personal use, tips the balance in favor of fair use. All right. We got to get that out the way. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man. So it's really good to get some more information out here. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times, with all the drama that's going on with the Epstein tapes and all of that stuff, we get kind of distracted about what's actually going on, what it affects our everyday lives. And, all this student loan and Pell Grant stuff is really important, especially, having children and things like that are high school age, college age. And a lot of things have changed, but some of them haven't. But I want to get this lady's perspective right quick, just to kick things off, to see what she says. And it's very interesting. Let's see.
So what does this Trump big beautiful bill mean for students, undergrads, graduate students, and parents too? What does it mean for Pell Grants? What does it mean for loans? Let's talk about it. You will now be disqualified from obtaining a Pell Grant if your student aid index or your SAI is 2 times the amount of maximum Pell. No grants for you. Also, if you get or you're awarded any other aid, private scholarships, outside scholarships, institutional aid from the college, No Pell Grants for you. For all my grad students, the Graduate Plus Loan Program, gone, done, eliminated. No more. There will be no more 0 monthly payments for low-income graduate students, and there is now a cap as to how much you can take out as a graduate.
Wow, so it's a cap on how much you could take out. And I think that cap is like 257,000 or something like that. You know, before, I don't know what it was before, but I guess to me, it sounds like they trying to put a cap on it so people won't be borrowing all this money and wind up in all this debt that they can't pay back half the time.
The grad student. Next up, Parent Plus loans. Y'all ready for this? For all my parents taking out Parent Plus loans, now there is a cap. You can only take out $20,000 per child per year with a total maximum amount of $65,000 per child. Graduate students, you can only take out $20,500 per year with a total of $100,000, period. And if you're in med school or professional school, you can take out $50,000 a year with a capped amount of $200,000 total. Oh, but wait, it gets better. No more subsidized loans. As soon as you take a loan out, the interest starts to accrue. Private loan interest rates are going to be through the roof now, sky high. Your repayment plan for your loan will be damn near impossible. Loan forgiveness is now 30 years instead of 20. Now is the time, now more than ever, for you to be looking into, investigating, and applying to scholarships. And if you need help, I got you. Reach out to me and email me for more information.
All right, all right. So shout out to that sister right there. You know, very good information. I think that what's going on right now is if you can't afford these degrees, you know, you might want to look into other options. You know what I'm saying? And like she said, scholarships. See, there's many different loans. It doesn't have to come from the federal government. You get private loans, you can get private grants. So we have to be a little bit more creative in our approach in paying for higher education. It sucks. But I would strongly suggest if you trying to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, that's where this is gonna come into effect. And like you said, she said the cap is 200,000. And I wonder, like, what is the average cost of become a doctor, to get a doctorate, you know? And I did a little research on that. And let's see. Well, voila. The World Wide Web, you got information at your fingertips. And it says the cost of a doctorate degree varies significantly based on factors like the type of degree, the program's length, and the institution. But it can range from 10,000 to 200,000 or more over the course of 4 to 8 years. Many doctoral students receive financial assistance such as scholarships, grants, or assistantships, which can substantially reduce the overall cost. So wow. So yeah, so typically it's around that amount, 200,000, right? So that's not too off on what the cap is. So, you know, a lot of people sitting up here saying all this, that, and that, but that's about what you gonna pay anyway. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that right there is where you need to be. And then you can probably get, like, if you're trying to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, and you could get, if you need additional funding, you could get scholarships, you could get. So I'm thinking Trump just basically lowered everything down to where you just need this for your education. Nothing more, nothing less. Because a lot of times people get these student loan grants and they use it for other things. You know, you get that student loan check and people be buying clothes and cars with it. You know what I'm saying? I remember them days, you know what I'm saying? People get them big old checks in the mail for student loans, but they spend it elsewhere. You know what I'm saying? But I got another visual here that, this guy breaks it down very well. And this is gonna be really good. And his name is Aros, Aros. And he's gonna break down the student loan. He says the cap is $257K. You know what I'm saying? Unlike the young lady earlier.
Education has changed dramatically. My name's Eros. I'm going to deep dive into the big, beautiful, bloated, whatever you want to call it, bill that just passed Congress in the United States. And education is going to change forever. Let's dive in.
We won with young. We won with old. We won with highly educated. We won with poorly educated. I love the poorly educated.
So I think it's pertinent and important to talk about funding for education and how that's going to change specifically under this bill moving forward, probably forever, maybe. It's a very contentious thing, but I wanted to give you the no BS. I'm going to be referencing my notes right here because I want to be able to give you the exact data and exact numbers that if you are a student and you're potentially looking at going to college or grad school, or you're a non-traditional student and you're trying to change careers and you want to go to grad school, med school, law school, get a master's or so on and so forth. So you're leaving the military, you want to take out a potentially student loan. We're going to talk about that. And then let's say you're a parent and you're wondering, is it worth it? What's going to happen and how are my children going to be affected when it comes to seeking higher education in America? So we're going to go specifically, this whole entire video is going to talk about the average cost of tuition, whether it's public or private in the United States, and that's with housing as well. I'm going to give you some examples, my experience. We're going to talk about that overall student loan caps. I'm going to give you a scenario. I'm going to tell you exactly the limit, what you could do with each, whether it's undergraduate, master's program, professional programs, because they all have different things. And then on top of that, we're going to talk about specifically what I'm seeing, because I've now pursued 4 different degrees: Master of Finance, Master of Real Estate Development, Master of Business, and my undergrad. And I'm going to tell you from my real life perspective of what's happening right now, because I'm currently still in school, and tell you how these education institutions are going to get around this. So let's jump right in. So just to start, I'm going to talk about the overall federal student loan cap. Currently, it is now going to be set at $257,000 annual, or $257,000 period, permanent. This is a lifetime borrowing limit for all federal student loans per borrower. It does not include Parent Plus loans. And it's going to include all loan types, whether undergraduate, graduate, and professional. And professional, if you're not familiar, that's med school, law school, dental school. Those are going to be seen as professional degrees under this new law. For bachelor's degrees or undergraduate, there's going to be subject to existing annual limits. So that's going to be like approximately $5,500 to $7,500 a year, depending on dependency and year in school. Undergraduate loans count towards that $257,000 total, but there's no sub-specific cap for undergrad borrowing. Subsidized loans are not eliminated. And the Senate version actually kept those. So you're going to be able to still take out
Okay, so that's a debunk right there. That lady said something about subsidized loans are gone. He's saying, he's breaking it down, you still have that available. Those subsidized loans that will account for that additional. So maybe that's where that extra $57K is coming in at. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, man, I know they ain't trying to take away people's ability to pay for their degree. He just wants it to be, if you serious about going and let's make this clear. If you go to a community college, which is sometimes just as great, just least expensive, you could get the same quality education for the less amount. But if you're trying to go above and beyond for your education and go to these grad schools, that's when a lot of this stuff changes for you. This when you add all this extra stuff and these different provisions are cut off. It's really centered for people that really can't afford it, but try to go anyway and put themselves in debt. That's what I'm gathering.
subsidized loans, regardless of what people are saying online and so on and so forth. So that is somewhat of a win in this situation for those that are struggling to find resources to pay for for higher education, but subsidized loans are still in it. Now let's talk about master's or general graduate programs. So new borrowing is capped at $100,000 lifetime for all non-professional graduate programs. So like, let's say, for me, I was in a master's real estate development program at ASU, and I think that was approximately with tuition and housing, I think they estimated it to be around $80,000 to $90,000 just for the year. So if you were just going to seek a 1-year master's degree, let's say for that example, this would cover it, right? But existing grad plus loans are going away. So only subsidized loans are going to remain. And this 100K is also part of the $257,000 total. So if, for example, like let's say you went to that MRED program at ASU and you borrow $60,000 from undergrad, you can still borrow up to $100,000 in grad school, but you'll hit $160,000 of the $257,000 total. Now let's talk about med school, law school, dental school. These are those professional programs. So they're going to be capped at $200,000 total, borrowing for these programs, and a new annual borrowing limit of $50,000 per year. This is a sub-limit inside of the $257,000 cap. Grad plus loans, like I said, will be eliminated for new borrowing after July 1st of 2026. So if you're starting grad school this fall, you can still take out grad plus loans. Unfortunately, after that, starting July 1st, 2026, you're not going to be able to. So this is what you cannot exceed, right? $257,000 and total borrowing lifetime, $100,000 for general grad programs, $200,000 for professional med school, law school, dental program, something like that. So if you're allowed to borrow $200K for med school, you only get that if you haven't already borrowed too much for undergrad or grad school. Now, here's the effective date, and let's talk about grandfathering, because some of you guys might already have loans, and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, when is this going to start? The changes apply to new loans dispersed after July 1st, 2026. Students who are actively enrolled in a grad or professional program have already taken out, let's say, at least one grad.
So that's next year this time, July 1st, when all of this really starts to take effect. So July 1st, 2026.
Plus loan for that program before July 1st, 2026, you can still keep borrowing grad plus loans, like I said, but it's going to be extended through the 2028-2029 school year. These limits do not apply retroactively to loans already dispersed before that date. So we've talked about everything when it comes to those caps and those minimums. Now let's talk about the average cost of college tuition in America. And I'm getting all this data off of educationdatainitiative.org. So currently, annual cost of college public for a 4-year in-state tuition, in-state college, the cost of tuition is approximately $10,000. The cost of attendance is around $30,000, and that's going to be, we're not talking about student loan interest. We're not talking about moving expenses. This is specifically just cost of attendance versus cost of tuition. Now let's talk about 4-year out of state. It's $28,000 approximately for tuition, and cost of attendance is approximately $45,000 for tuition. Now, given the current caps right now for undergraduate bachelor's degrees, guess what? There's not a specific cap, so you're going to be able to hit those. You'll still be able to pay for undergraduate.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like everything that they did, I'm pretty sure they went in and did the same thing he's doing and looked at the cap. What's the average? What do these people specifically need to cover their costs? That's exactly all we're giving them. You know what I'm saying? That's it. They just making sure that you get enough to pay for your education, and no more, no less.
100% if you were to choose with student loans. It doesn't mean you can afford it, but it just means that you can still be able to do that. Now let's talk about annual cost of college for private institutions. Now, once again, this is all just undergraduate. So for 4-year private cost of tuition, you're looking at approximately $40,000 just for tuition alone. And cost of attendance, you're looking at approximately $57,000 for tuition. Now, this is obviously considerably more than the cost of attendance for a public school is actually almost 2x across the board. If not just for tuition, you're looking at 3x. But for the most part, like I said, that cap of $257,000, that's for all degrees. And then for undergraduate, you still are limited depending on dependency and you're in school. But for the most part, you can still cover the vast majority of undergraduate. Now, let's talk about the average total cost of college. The total cost of college, and that's going to be specifically if you're living on, if you got room and board, living on campus, so on and so forth. And now this is going to talk about transportation or anything like that. The total cost of college for public institutions, 4-year total cost of tuition, you're looking at $40,000 approximately. Total cost of the degree in and of itself, you're looking at $109,000. Now let's talk about private, or now that's, excuse me, that's public. Now let's talk about 4-year out of state that for public, 113,000 approximately in total cost of that degree, 180 something thousand dollars. Now this is where you may not hit that cap. However, you're going to get deadly close to not only hitting the cap, but also putting yourself in a position where these new income repayment plans, they're going to really trap you in a box to the point of where you're going to have to really think cognitively and say, hey, is this the best decision? Is this the best decision for me to move forward to take out all this debt? Should I go to a 2-year in-state college before I transfer? Should I seek out more scholarships from the actual institution I'm going to? You should be doing these things anyway, for the most part, if you want to think strategically.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what it boiled down to, making people consider all their options. And we can pretty much, we get the gist of that. You know what I'm saying? Just considering your options, bro. And do you want to put yourself in all that debt? Do you really want to? Because you got people that be in college for years just aimlessly picking up debt. You know what I'm saying? People go to school forever and just be $1 trillion in debt and have no intentions on paying it back, including myself. I ain't say that, but I'm guilty of that too. Yeah, because if you take out a loan anywhere else, you would have to pay it back. If you took out a car loan, you got to pay it back. If you take out a house loan, you got to pay it back. So why would student loans be any different? I talk a lot of crap about other people paying their way. So I got to pay my way. You know what I'm saying? Because my debt shouldn't fall on the taxpayers. You know what I'm saying? So that's just what it is. But I think that what Trump is doing is really trying to bring back manufacturing jobs, right? He's trying to bring back these high-skilled trades and vocational schools. And I think that's where he wants this economy to go, back to the blue-collar way of things. So I think he's incentivizing trade schools and vocational schools, because all this business that he's bringing here, car companies, and we're going to need construction workers to build these buildings. We're going to need people that know how to do wiring. We're going to need a lot of people that are handyman out here. We're going to need truck drivers. We're going to need more of those type of jobs. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, Trump threw that in the air. And yeah, man, let's talk about it. I got a video here, that he actually said that. Like, he's going to give funding more towards trade schools. And this is good to know, so you know what direction the country is going into, And
President Trump is escalating his feud with America's oldest university, now seeking to cut any federal ties with Harvard, including all remaining contracts. He's already frozen $2 billion in federal grants. He's trying to block the school from enrolling international students. And now he's suggesting diverting any remaining grant money and instead wants that to fund trade schools. News Nation national correspondent Alex Capriello joins us live. Alex, you visited with a trade school director in a Chicago suburb. How is he feeling about the president's proposal?
Well, he's very excited. In fact, he said he would be overjoyed if all of a sudden his curriculum and his students got a massive influx of money. Now, keep in mind, we're still very unclear about whether or not President Trump is actually going to follow through with this idea. And if he does, how much he would give and to whom. But it gives us an opportunity to learn more about trade schools, vocational programs, and the dire need that they have for further financing. So we're at R&R Trade Schools. This is an example of a classroom where students would learn all about repairing, replacing AC and heating units. You can see they can get their hands dirty learning all about the intricacies of the hardware and the wiring systems. And in reality, on a typical classroom day, this whole place would be packed shoulder to shoulder with students. But you can see it's relatively small. Only about 16 students or so can actually fit in here. So the director tells me if he was to get more money, then he'd be able to fill this classroom with more units. He would be able to sort of whittle down that wait list of students who want to learn a new skill, a new trade, and make that their new career. And the fact of the matter is, there are tens of thousands of Americans who are hungry for an education, but may not have the means or the desire to pursue traditional university schooling. Well, that's where vocational training can be the perfect fit. For a fraction of the cost, you can learn a new trade that will be in high demand for the rest of your career. Things like electrical engineering, construction, and plumbing. There are around 9,000 trade and technical schools in the country, employing more than 100,000 people and generating $16 billion worth of revenue. But here's the thing. There's a major funding gap when it comes to federal financing. The U.S. government spends around $140 billion on higher education, but only $28 billion of it, that's roughly 20%, goes to trade schools.
Wow. Now that's some good facts for you right there. You know, basically $140 billion a year on higher education. Be that, community colleges, universities, whatever, even trade and vocational training. But only 20% of that goes actually to trade schools. So from my vantage point, I think that, Trump, he didn't solidify anything, but he's speaking into existence to kind of even that out, because we're going to need more people. We're going to need more trade schools and more vocational programs to teach these young people how to do these trades, because it's going to be a influx of demand for these type of positions, and they pay very well. If a fraction of the cost of a 4-year college degree, you got people that go to college and acquire all this debt, and they don't even make what they, should be making for what the education that they pay for, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a 4-year degree, when you could just go to school for maybe 16 weeks and make more money doing that. It's something to think about.
While giving me a tour of this school, R&R Trade School, Director Chris Martinez emphasized the importance his education is providing to America's working class.
A lot of guys, men and women, need this opportunity, especially a lot of young people coming fresh out of high school. They do need this opportunity, and we see it all the time when they come in here, super confused on what they're going to do with the rest of their life. And they come in here and they just feel more confident at the end of the program, and they're very grateful at the end of the day. Now they're able to provide for their family.
I think everybody should have, at least, even if you go to a 4-year college, everybody should have a secondary trade, at least. You should know how to, do construction. You should know how to do, you cut hair professionally. You should know how to bartend. You should know how to be a plumber. Pick a trade, and just to have that on the back burner, even if you do eventually go to a college, a traditional college. You should have that in your back pocket, because you just never know. The more options, the better. And like this man said, now these young people coming fresh out of high school, they go here for a few months, if that, and have a trade that they can feed their family with. And they ain't even waste a year, if that.
And Nicole, enrolling in a trade school typically costs around 25%, a quarter of the cost it would for traditional university programming. And you can typically get your degree or your certificate in about a year to 3 years, sometimes even less. Like, for example, here at R&R trade schools, a lot of these students are graduating in about 6 months' time, ready to hit the workforce.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and
yeah. So, hey, man, you know, it's something to think about right there. I definitely wanted to hit y'all with that. You know what I'm saying? Because we talk about the different cuts today to the financial aid, and regardless if you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, what you can say is that $250,000. Come on, man. If you got to pay for more, if you need more than that just to pay for education, I don't know what to say. That should be enough to cover whatever you need to do as far as your education. But there are other avenues as far as, like we said, acquiring scholarships. You know, please get with your financial aid if you are in high school or what have you, and figure out if you're in college, figure out how you can, you know, keep your grades up. For one, that increases your possibilities to get grants and scholarships, you know. And I got a son now. He's 16. He's on the dean's list, and these are the type of things we got to consider, you know. But yeah, you know, like the thing about it is this, you know, what the big beautiful bill is doing is trying to cut down on debt that we have acquired in this country, and we are almost $2 trillion in debt due to student loans, you know. So the system is broken anyway, and it needs to be revamped. And this is going to make people really think twice. Because if you, like we said, if you want to go to college and you just go to that community college and get that 2-year, 3-year degree, this not really going to affect you. But if you're trying to go bigger and doctorate and all of that, that's when this kind of cap you off. You know what I'm saying? And there's really nothing wrong with going to trade or vocational school. Like he said, them kids graduating in 6 months, ready to hit the world. You know what I'm saying? But hey, you know, this is part 3, debunking the lies told about the big beautiful bill. And man, I had a great time, a lot of great information. It's your boy Jay Taylor, Voices for the Voiceless. We love y'all. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Peace and blessings.